Hey everyone, this is Robert coming at you with another video on my biggest likes and dislikes about owning a Tesla Model 3. So I've had one for about 10 months, and I'm going to be going through all the main things that I've had issues with, whether or not I recommend buying this car or not, and a lot of the things that I do like. So this may be helpful for you if you're considering a Tesla. Just some things that you're only aware about after owning it and driving it for some time. So I have the Standard Range Plus. I have a white one with aero wheels. It gets 250-mile range, and recently was price reduced to $37,990. So this is the base model that you can basically order online. It is the most popular model that people have. So 10,000 miles in, and also I have standard autopilot, so I did not pay for the full self-driving upgrade. I'll be kind of taking a lower. I wrote this all down, and I'll drop that in the video description so that you can just take a look and easily read all the likes and dislikes. So let's start with dislikes. So number one, big thing that people mention is the screen. When you're driving this car, everyone mentions that, oh, it's a big departure from having a screen here that you can see different information on your miles, your speed, and then having to shift your eyes over to the right. I haven't had that issue, but the main thing I do have an issue is because the screen is so big and it's very central, a lot of the time there's controls that if you're sitting and driving, you kind of have to reach over and really lean over to touch buttons that are on the right, whether it's music, whether it's navigation to recenter it, or other items. You kind of really not only have to take your eyes off the road, but you have to stretch pretty far. Luckily, that should be able to be a software update from Tesla, but generally that's something that is minor, but is something that I don't like too much. The software updates, let's talk about that. So software updates are both a like and a dislike. The software updates are great. We'll talk about that more in the like section because you're getting new features or enhancements to the car that's going to make it better. But with all software, we know when you have a new release, there's bugs. So while you're getting new things, other things may be breaking, like the rear view camera will suddenly just shut off intermittently, or the audio just doesn't work and you have to do a hard reset on the car, which involves holding down both scroll wheels to restart the car. It doesn't happen often, but this never typically happens in a ICE car or a gas car because it's not really software based. So that's one thing that's kind of annoying, and yes, they can fix it, but every fix potentially causes other problems. Luckily, it doesn't happen often enough where it's a big deal breaker, but I have noticed that that's pretty annoying, that software typically can break other things with your Bluetooth, with your music, with your sound, with your camera. Since everything is so software based, that means there's a lot more opportunities for failure, but also more opportunities for success. So I would give more pros to software than cons, but that is definitely something that's annoying. Other thing to note is on road trips, supercharging, this may not be the case everywhere. So in Arizona, a lot of the superchargers getting to California are the main road trips that I've taken. They're in places that don't usually have food or easily accessible bathrooms. There's sometimes not even garbage. There's nothing to do. So even though this does have an entertainment system where you can kind of watch movies, unless you're paying for the premium data package, which gives you unlimited streaming to watch Netflix, YouTube, or other items in the car, it's just, I think there's some opportunity there for improvement. It's a little nitpicky. Supercharging takes a while, and it's you got to fill your time with something, because often you are charging, despite even the version 3 superchargers that cut charging time and preconditioning the battery for optimal supercharging, you're still going to be sitting there for at least half an hour. And overall, driving from Arizona to California, which would normally take around 5.5 hours, you're looking at closer to 6.5 to 7 hours in the total trip because of supercharging. So that's just something just to be aware of, is that charging still has a long way to go, but there are some actually pros to resting and stopping we'll get into in the like section. I think one of the other issues that I don't like is that the car advertises, and Tesla advertises, max range. So it's a Standard Range Plus, 250 miles. The reality is you'll mostly never get 250 miles for two reasons. A, there are a lot of things to consider with Tesla saying you don't want to charge your car to 100%. You don't even want to charge it to 90%. And depending on how long you own the car will determine if you should charge your battery to 90% all the time or 80% all the time, and when to charge it to 100%. So you have to think about that in a way that you never had to think of with a gas car. And most early adopters of Tesla, and even adopters now, maybe won't mind as much. It depends on if you take road trips, and there's arguments on, well, you can just plug it in every night and wake up with 80%, which is fine because your commute for most Americans is, 40 miles or less every day and all of these things. But it's just a lot. The things like that, I think, hurt mass adoption, that a lot of people are like, wow, this is another thing I have to worry about or think about that I didn't have to before. It's not easier. Typically, you want, when you're moving someone to adopt something new, everything should be pretty, like, as Elon puts, an order of magnitude better. That's how you get mass adoption and true disruption, is that it's not just a little bit better, it is an order of magnitude better. So if there's anything that's even worse or not the same, that's of course going to, disincentivize owners who are thinking about EVs. So the max range is hard to get to because you're not supposed to charge the battery and you have to worry about damaging it. And your length of ownership at 90% even is like, yeah, that's fine, but the battery will start to degrade faster if you keep charging it to 90%. So you're never really getting the full range out, which means you're plugging it in more often. Or if you're leaning on superchargers, you're having to do that more often. And it takes a really long time to charge from a supercharger from 80 to 100%. The biggest analogy that's most commonly used, it's like filling a water bottle. If you put a lot of high pressure water into a water bottle, it'll fill up very quickly, but as it starts to get towards the top, the water will start spilling out. So you have to lower the water pressure to make sure you're filling it up. You could argue that I can time filling up my water bottle so that doesn't happen, but with electric cars, it's a little bit different. So those are just little minor things you have to keep in mind. The other part with the range is that 250 miles is not much range. It's okay, like around Phoenix, around Scottsdale, even on the freeways, I do get the rated range. Like I can average about what's needed to get that range, but on longer trips where there's maybe an incline, a lot of wind, you're driving faster. What I'm saying, it also applies to gas cars, but the fact that gas cars have between 400 and 500 mile range, having a 500 mile range car temporarily drop to a 400 mile range because you're going up a mountain or going up a hill is fine. But if you're at a 250 mile range car and your next supercharger is really far away, that jumps, and you're not only supposed to charge to 80 or 90%, suddenly your car is now only allowed to be charged to 180 to 200 miles. And then that's cut by another 33% because of the range loss, because of an incline or wind. And you're really only getting like 130, 140 miles out of the car before you have to charge it. So you really can only go about 2 hours of driving on a long road trip. This is driving from Arizona to San Diego and back before you have to charge again. And that's pretty much how the superchargers are spaced out. You can't actually get, if someplace is 200 miles away and you have 250 miles, you can't get there. And that's really weird. You can only go like 160, 170 maybe if there's a supercharger that just happens to be the perfect distance away. So you end up charging more often than you should with your given range. And the only way to avoid that, and maybe typically I have to charge 3 times to get to San Diego, is to upgrade and spend 10 grand on the long range version to only stop twice instead of 3 times. And then I'm still arriving with very little range, and then I have to plug in at someone's home that may not have a Tesla, and superchargers in California are very scarce. So range is something that they advertise a lot, but you're not really getting that max range at that point. The other thing is wireless charging. So I bought the aftermarket wireless charging, and this might be hard to see, but the dock where you put your phones, this lip is incredibly short. So I have a Galaxy S20, and even with a case, like the phone is always slipping off the charging pad and falling into this lower storage compartment. And that's just a little bit annoying, that this should be longer and accommodate more phones. I pretty much have to put my phone face down, which defeats the purpose of wireless charging, so that it doesn't slip because my case is relatively thick. Or if you're not having a case, it shouldn't be an issue. But even when this storage is closed, there's a gap here. So anything you're putting here can always fall down into this storage cubby. So that's a little bit annoying. Let's talk about Autopilot. So Autopilot is fascinating because Autopilot works really well when you don't have to change lanes and you haven't paid off driving version. So right now with the stock, you just hit the stock down twice to initiate Autopilot, and it comes with the car basically as auto steer and auto braking, starting and stopping. And it works really well, except for the fact that I think there's some improvements. So the Honda Insight has built-in safety features that are similar to Autopilot. That's lane keep assist system. They call it LCAS. That actually, to me, is a better way of doing the lane keep and auto steer, because in the Tesla, if you try and change lanes, Autopilot disengages and you only keep the cruise control follow in play, and then you have to re-engage Autopilot. With Honda, you can freely move the car and their lane keep stays on. So if I go into the other lane, I don't have to reinitiate anything. It's already on, and then the car will keep you in the lane. Like, that's a really smooth system, because in the Tesla, the wheel really locks up. So if you try and you don't use your turn signal, so when you use your turn signal and change a lane, it frees up the wheel, and then you can turn, the Autopilot disengages, and then you have to re-engage it. It's pretty annoying. But if you don't use a turn signal, the car's fighting you, and then it's a really jerky motion, and the whole car's going like this, and then the passengers are like, what the hell was that? And it's like, well, I was just trying to change lanes. I didn't use the turn signal, which you should do, or if you don't time it correctly. The lane, turning the lane as part of the Autopilot, the warning system comes on also intermittently, is another dislike. So while you're using Autopilot, while you're changing lanes or not, the car will randomly just say, vehicle departing lane, and start beeping like crazy. Even if you have the lane departure warning turned off, which I don't recommend because it's a safety thing, but if you turn that off, it still happens, even though the turn signal is on. And so it's really random, and if anything is more dangerous, because you're kind of freaking out going, what is going on? And the car is just beeping at you and you're not sure why. It's not inherently obvious, because you have to take your eyes off the road to look at the screen to see what is the error I'm getting, and all you're hearing is just like a bunch of warning sounds. So that, I think, is a big issue. My wife hates it. It's super annoying for me, and there's no way to turn it off or even reduce the volume. There's something called Joe mode, which is a setting that's supposed to reduce the sound of alerts for children that are sleeping, and even with that on, it's still really loud. Other Autopilot dislikes are that it phantom brakes a lot, so sometimes the car will just brake on its own. And I know this is in beta, but it's touted as a main feature that's included with the car, and they can just throw the beta tag on it forever at this point, just like Google Maps has been beta for a decade now. And it kind of honestly like waives liability from Tesla, because you can always fall back that it's just beta, we're learning. But when cars, if you're driving and a car cuts in front of you, even super far ahead, the car will brake super hard. Really doesn't need to do that hard. And that's not a great, comfortable experience. So that's something you have to be aware of. It's like any car turning. Make sure obviously your hands on their wheel, but more importantly that your feet are ready on the accelerator to speed up, because it's going to brake really hard. It also brakes really hard in the start and stop and go. So less so in traffic, but more if you're going on the highway, red light, car in front of you, the car's braking, it brakes really late, and I'm not sure why. There's a smoother way to do that. And then when the cars start to drive again and the Tesla picks up, it accelerates kind of hard to catch up. So the experience of just sitting in the car is a little bit of like back and forth that could be a lot better. The other piece, this now I'll start to get into some nitpicky things, is that I think it's tiny. Like, this thing could be a lot bigger and have more visibility. Like, it's fine, but I think they could have done some improvements here. This looks good. I can see pretty much everything in the back, but it's for me. The other dislike is wind noise. So this car has a lot of road noise and a lot of wind noise, and that's typically at speeds above 50 miles an hour, especially if it's windy. I mentioned this in my other video, but like if you get into any other car at like any price point, almost, talk about my wife's Honda Insight, my mom has a CX-5, like the cabin is so much quieter, like across the board. And if this car would have a much more quiet cabin, the sound system would be better. Overall, the just feel would be better. And so I'm not just cranking the volume up more to drown out the road noise from everywhere else. My sound is typically above 50-60% just to get it at a volume that wouldn't, that can overcome the wind noise that is coming through the car. So that's a little bit of a dislike. This model also doesn't have any floor mats. So when you get your SR Plus, it comes with no floor mats. No all-weather, no carpet. You kind of have to buy that. There's a ton on Amazon. You can get them from Tesla directly, but it's going to cost you probably twice as much as what you can get on Amazon. So keep that in mind. Kind of like a phone protector. If you know you're buying this car, order the floor mat so that they can arrive right on time. And let's see what else. Power lift gate is kind of annoying that it doesn't have one. It's not a big deal. It would be nice that if this car did have one. A lot of cars that are really a lot less expensive than Teslas, have power lift gates as a pretty standard feature, yet this is an all-electric car and doesn't have one, and is a big reason why people are upgrading to the Model Y. You have to get a whole nother model car just for a feature that sounds amazing. Like power lift gate should be a standard feature. I see it in cars priced well under $30,000 have power lift gates, including the not that the Model S is that cheap, but they've built it before on the sedan, so it doesn't have to be SUV exclusive. So these are, I mentioned a couple of things for Arizona. So the other things I would mention are, if you are buying a Tesla and you are in Arizona, buy full glass coverage. There are so many rocks on the road. Rock is a standard landscaping item across all commercial and residential areas. The rocks get stuck in the tires of the car and then they kick up. And if you're behind any big car, I have in 10 months, 3 rock cracks in the windshield and probably 50 other little tiny nicks in the front glass. And I'm getting my front windshield replaced as soon as a local chip repair place gets them in stock. And when I was on the phone with the insurance agent, they're like, so, you know, what, like, tell me what's going on. Like, how did you get the rock chip? And just tell me more about it. And I said, I'm in Arizona. And she just stopped me right there. She's like, yep, that's why. Just being in Arizona, you know, it's a thing there. So full glass coverage is highly recommended for insurance. And then the last item for Arizona specific is, because it gets so hot here, and I've been seeing this in the forums and I'm kind of worried about it, is I'm coming up on a year of ownership and it looks like these cars are dropping dead like flies. The 12-volt battery for some reason cannot withstand the heat, the heavy heat that with these cars sitting outside or even in hot garages, it somehow kills the 12-volt battery, and everyone has to either A, go to the service center because the car gave them a warning, and if you don't go to the service center as soon as you get the warning, like, your car could just drop dead at any minute and never start up, and you have to get it towed, which is a huge pain in the ass. And then from you have to buy an aftermarket battery. There's another brand online. You can type an aftermarket 12-volt battery that doesn't die, that'll last you what it should normally last, but you have to do that. The fact that you have to do that is ridiculous for a car like this. And in the forums, like every other day, we're seeing someone say, my car just died, 12-volt battery issue, and it's literally only 1 year old. So that's really annoying for Arizona, but something to keep in mind. If you get that warning, bring it to the service center right away. They cover it. It won't be a charge, but you are wasting time out of your day for something that hopefully should be resolved from Tesla. So other than that, there are a lot of things I do like about this car. Overall, despite that's 15 minutes of dislikes, I would buy this car again. I like the fact that I can wake up every day with a full charge. Electricity, this may not be the case in all states, is crazy cheap in Arizona. I can charge this car from 0 to almost 100. Not that it's ever really that low, but for less than $2. It's 4 cents a kilowatt hour because I have solar. And even if you don't have solar, there's other plans that have EV charging rates that make this car really, really cheap. So usually it's like 50 cents to charge this every night to make sure I'm waking up with like 70 to 80% battery. It's pretty amazing. Road trips, honestly, despite what I said earlier about needing multiple stops, it's really nice actually. When I arrive, I can drive for 6 hours. I'm like, fine. My mental clarity, I'm not tired. It's honestly relaxing, and I wish I could go a little bit further, but the brakes actually do make a noticeable impact than trying to drive 5-6 hours straight without stopping and no bathroom breaks, or maybe 1 bathroom breaks. That kind of sucks and gets really boring. I don't feel that here. And Autopilot's partial to credit too, since your brain doesn't have to be so focused on staying in your lane. That brake and being able to look around, enjoy the drive is just amazing, since Autopilot, that's included, not full self-driving, does about 90% plus of the driving on a long road trip. It's really, really nice. I really like the steering wheel. So this steering, maybe it's subjective because I'm comparing it to other cars, feels really good. This is like a vegan leather, and from a sportiness perspective, it just feels awesome. Those are also sport pedals. So normally the car doesn't come with sport pedals, and I found those on Amazon for under 15 bucks, and they look really good and are super easy to put on. And you can transfer that in the future since they don't come standard. Let's see what else. I love starting the car. This is one of the most underappreciated items in Arizona, is preconditioning the car, and maybe in colder climates too, is heating the car from the house. So you can open up the app and set the temperature. It's so appreciative because I'm in a garage right now, and in order to get this car down to like low 70s, which is what I like to keep it at before driving, because it's 110 out today, is that it's not filling up the garage with fumes. So when I come home and park the car, there's no fumes that are lingering in the garage that maybe will enter the home. Like, that's very noticeable even on my wife's hybrid, which the engine has to kick on to keep the AC running. This car, I have no guilt. Like, I can run the AC while I'm waiting for takeout. I can keep the car on, which it's never truly off, and run a really good, like, I love the AC system in here. It's not the heat pump version the Y has, but it works really well. It blasts cold, and I don't feel guilty leaving it on, and it works really well. And preheating or pre-cooling the car in advance is just, I think, a game changer for living in any extreme climates. It doesn't even matter actually. 80 outside can make the inside of the car 100. So on that, it has cabin overheat protection, which will kick on automatically when the car, if you want it to, reaches like 105 degrees. So it'll never be like 140, 150. The other items I like are dog mode. They have camp mode, dog mode, and leaving the AC on. So if I go to like Costco or go shopping or whatever, and the car is just sitting in the sun for 15, 20 minutes, and I come back, the car's not scorching hot. And it's just really, really nice because I know electricity is really, really cheap, and I can run this battery and charge it every day totally fine. Speaking of cheap, so I've gone 10 on this car, and I've gotten pretty much, despite, let me scroll here to the miles, 10,300 miles, averaging 237 watt hours per mile. Crazy, crazy efficient. I have fun driving this, but the amount of kilowatt hours that I've used relative to the miles, if I had a performance car that's similar, that got about 30 miles to the gallon, which is, I think, is pretty generous for that car, and you're paying gas prices around $3 a gallon for premium fuel, I've saved, especially with miles from referring myself, I've saved about $900 this year on gasoline. I've only paid in electricity costs to drive this car 10,000 miles, less than $100. I calculated I paid about $86 in electricity costs since I've got it, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I remember back in California when gas, or many years ago, was almost $5 a gallon. I'd pay over $70. I borrowed for a period of time a Lexus GS, and I paid like $70 to fill that tank once. And in lifetime, I've paid $86 in electricity costs, which is amazing. The power is amazing on this car. Like, just driving, like if I want to go somewhere, and this is the lowest model pretty much right now is the SR Plus, I just get there. Like, if I want to drive to the next lane to get ahead of something, it's like, from safety, it's really nice. My wife loves the power too, and it's just, you feel like you're teleporting in the car because of the instant torque and the driving dynamics because of the low center of gravity and the battery being on the bottom. You've heard this over and over. Like, it's super fun to drive around town when you need that power. The last item that I'll say that I really like this car is about this car is the Sentry mode. So basically, this car has, and the security in general. Right now, the car has the ability, when you leave the car, to record activity that happens around the car, and then you can watch the footage on the display. It's happening. I can actually watch footage on the display and basically look at footage, not only from incidents that happened while the car was parked, which basically you can give yourself a home security, but I can look at footage that's something called dash cam. So while you're driving around town, it's always recording footage. And from that, you can watch that footage from here. So for insurance claims, it's super amazing. But in general, I just feel really confident that I can leave my car somewhere, and if anything that happens, I'll have a recording of it, and my claim is approved. And also feel confident if I'm at a friend's house and I parked my car in their driveway or in my own driveway, I kind of have night vision and security system on my home if someone were to come to the house or do anything else. It's a really, really cool feature that I like. And there's really cool settings on, like, do you want us to capture the footage every time you honk the horn? Like, because there's things like that you're implying there's an accident that's going to happen. And I think those are all the main areas that I like about the car. Like, I really highly recommend it. I think, the only other last thing is that this car does have some fitment issues, which is really disappointing because it's a 2020 model, and you'd think they'd get them to be a lot better. So, like, it's a lease, so I'm just like whatever on it. But that's another thing to keep in mind, is you can reject the car. So if you're buying one or leasing one and they have the delivery day, and it's really hard to not just get in it and drive away because you're so excited. You've been waiting possibly up to 2 months right now is the wait to buy a new car. Just look at it. Do the inspection, walk around the car, make sure all the fit's there, the paint's good, because if it's not, you can say, I don't want this car. and they have to fix it or get you a new car. That's especially true with the Model Y, but I would still do that whether you're getting the S, X, or the 3. It's just an ongoing item that Tesla's gotten a lot better, but it sucks that even with new models, even though they've been able to take learnings and apply them to the new ones, really it comes down to the manufacturing and what they're able to implement there. And Elon has even said in the United States, like, there's only so much improvement we can do to our existing factories, building from scratch. So like in Germany, when they have the Gigafactory opening up there, in China, we have the new Gigafactory there. They can implement new ways to paint, new ways to manufacture, because they're building it from the ground up, and they have limited space in Fremont. And so we're still seeing fitment issues in the United States. I'll be honest, the best quality Model 3s may be coming from overseas in the future, or Texas once they build another factory there. So overall, those are my likes and dislikes. I'll drop those in the comments. I hope that you like this. If you want more videos, feel free and subscribe, or ask in the comments things that you want to see. I can make really quick, this is a longer video, but like short 1 minute, 30-second, 2-minute videos on particular items that anyone wants to hone in on. Thanks again. Talk to you in the next one. Peace.